time away from that. Okay, this is going. All right, so tomorrow's quiz for sure is 1809 to 1825. But that also may include some things about the market revolution. I'm going over President Monroe today, right now. So we can kind of start in class tomorrow talking about the changes in the America's like first industrial revolution right in here. Now, kind of close out a little bit here. So about, where we're at this point. So we're getting into President James Monroe, elected in 1816, comes into office in 1817. Right? But wrap up War of 1812, small war, but significant war. Right? And we got to think about this was a war that lasted longer than the Spanish American War or the Mexican American War. There were 6,000 casualties, but it had big results. War of 1812, once again, and it was, and I'm just, all right. It's really newfound respect, new American identity, like that, about this results from War of 1812. It's finally like it seems like that countries are going to start respecting the United States. It seems like that point in here because they are going to fight for that. Newfound respect and kind of we're on the world stage that we can be accepted in the world. Three big things here about patriotism slash natural nationalism. Cultural nationalism, starts to kind of come together from books. You don't have to really know so much books, but just know the culture, like Noah Webster's dictionary, all right, James Fenimore Cooper writing novels like Last Mohicans, Washington Irving speaking of like Halloween coming up, Sleepy Hollow, because where was most of literature is seemed to be like where do you go for most of your literature if you're even in the United States at this time? Yeah, church, and then but what's the country or what's the countries for yeah, right. You go to like Britain, France, they're the ones that's supposed to be the ones the novels, the poetry, but now we're like we're establishing art schools, Hudson River Valley, once again landscaping, and it's becoming kind of like really really more kind of like indigenous to America what we're doing and that we have a culture and it's not stereotypically kind of hickish, uncivilized. It's something very like, that people are kind of like, hey, that's what is America about? Cultural nationalism. Economic nationalism. This is the big one here. Henry Clay in 1816. He's been elected since, been in office in Congress since 1810. He came in as a what? Labeled as a what? A war. Very good. Very good. He kind of jumps on this thing about creating this American system. It's Hamiltonian without mentioning Hamilton. He's saying there's three things that like what the national government can do at this time. Three things. And I always label it the bit, the BIT. All right. One thing for sure is to recharter the bank. And we know that from yesterday, recharge the bank. All right. So, yeah. Internal improvements. All right. Infrastructure, roads. We need a national road from Maryland to Ohio. Again, Ohio and Kentucky, all that is the West. Wait, you said the second one was what? Internal improvements. Okay. And I don't care if you put like, infrastructure. That's fine too. But I'm just saying the internal. And the T is what? That's going to be raised. The tariffs. Okay. That's going to go. Now we want a protective tariff for our industry. It's going to go up. Again, here, kind of raise up from 10% here to like, 20 to 25%. Like, again, as far as like, tariff protection. Now, all that American system, the bit, which one is not approved by the federal government? The bank is at this time. 1811 is when it was not. Okay, so that is kind of that's fine that you said it. It's totally fine like that. So the bank is accepted, so like that. Internal improvements, because right now in 1816, Madison is president at this time. And he says it's not, if you are a Republican, what do you say as your defense? It's not, you're right, it's not constitutional. It's not constitutional for the federal government to be, putting money in. And some of you are going to say, well, why did the turnpike roads get built? Why did these national roads get built? They leave it up to the states. Very good. Man, you guys are on the ball like that. So they leave it up to the states to do these internal improvements. So, but still, it is really economic to have a program like this because again, there's a lot of resentment here, and we know the South does not like any of this program. Most Southern states do not like any of this program. Yes. No, no. Please keep that in mind. We're going to get to that. Once again, the panic is going to come because that's going to be kind of the next big thing. It's in response to after the war. Now, what do we do? Well, we need that bank like that because we kind of saw through the war like that, and we do need internal improvements, even though it's not approved, and we need something to protect our industry, which is growing. And now we'll be able to trade in the Caribbean, trade in Europe, like that, and get back to trading with, again, really with our, used to be mother country, Great Britain, the most powerful country in the world. It's going to really probably make the economy grow. He's trying to have some look into the future. Very good. That's the second thing here. That's, the economic nationalism. Finally, the political nationalism. All right. So you had three nationalism: cultural, economic, and political. What is the status of our politics by 1816 and 1817? What do you think of the parts? What do you think? Republican, and almost Republican only. I know there's going to be a Federalist challenger to James Monroe in 1816, Mr. Rufus King, but really very few electoral votes go to him. And really, James Monroe in 1820 really goes unchallenged for the most part and gets all the electoral votes except for one person because they did it out of respect to what president? Yes, they say he actually says we want Washington to be the only one who had to be unanimously elected twice by every elector. But regardless, the politics seems about him. So this comes to my question that you are from what you need to support in this, and I definitely will tell you like this is one of the things that will be in some type of multiple choice or something here. Is this, as the newspaper labeled this, as James Monroe was going on a tour around the U.S. By the way, just FYI, James Monroe is most like Washington without the celebrity of Washington, right? Because he really has a very smart cabinet, but he really does not, he's not the one who writes the Monroe Doctrine. It's John Quincy Adams. You get it? So he really does not handle it. But it's still, okay like that, because it's pretty peaceful time. It is the era of good feelings, as the newspaper labeled it, as he was up in Boston. Now, here's my question to you guys. We need to kind of parse this through. Give me supporting evidence that it's not the era of good feelings. At what you have known from last year, or what you know already from it. Give me some things here that you say it's the era of mixed feelings. All right, it's the era of uneasy feelings. What would support that? What could be in a question tomorrow that says these are all the times that can support that this was not the era of good feelings, had some underlying challenges and problems between 1817 and 1825 here. Go ahead. Yes, sectionalism like that. So we have to know that word. There's a lot of sectionalism that's going on here as far as the states. And that means the issue of slavery, the Missouri Compromise had to be resolved. Again, what are you going to do? They had first proposed Congressman Talmadge, to have the Talmadge Amendment in there, and then they had the Missouri Compromise, by Henry Clay. And then also too, you had the American Colonization Society formed in 1817. What do we do with our free blacks? What do we do with our free blacks? What were their idea? send them to Africa, like again, gain a colony, like that. We'll even name name it Liberia for freedom and name the capital after President Monrovia, like that, and they would do this. That's kind of may settle our slavery issue because it's so contentious. This is why it says uneasy feelings. Sophie, go ahead. American Colonization Society is the this is kind of like our solutions to like slavery, and they said the solution will be, well, for our free blacks, we'll send them, recolonize them back to Africa. I know, like it's again in there, so that was part, part of the solution here. Yes. That's, they want them to go back there. See, I know, unlike 2019, where we love one another and we accept one another for, like I said, we don't think about skin color. See, back then they thought that if there's a certain amount of people who look a certain way, live in your neighborhood, be around you, they shouldn't be in the country. But unlike today, like again, so what we're like, but they thought that like it would just make things so much easier. Like again, everything for everybody, like that. Go ahead and if I can use such a phrase, send them back to Africa. I said, and that would like really, and you actually have. I would just clear this up. You have some African Americans who will go along with that too. Most of them were not. You can just like, oh, go back to where exactly? I said again, that's a continent, like that. That I mean, yeah, right. So it really was, but people had this thing about, unlike today, that like if your neighborhood or if your community or your town is one race or basically one religion, that everything's going to be fine because it's the skin, maybe some of your beliefs that causes all the problems and everything. If we were all just like look a certain way, we'd be a-okay. We don't think like that today, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you. All right. So, what do you mean by that? Seriously, it's a good question. Yes, sure. I see what you're saying like that. Yeah, you would do have some hierarchical things here. What's the ironic thing that's going to happen after about up until 1871 is about, maybe if I can get this right, 30,000 between all those years that go back there. They they treat the indigenous Africans bad. They even enslave some of them. Like that. I know the irony behind that. So you get that kind of like, so that kind of happens too in a way. So, but again, that shows uneasy feeling, and also too Denmark Vesey. And the reason why I don't call it a rebellion, because Denmark Vesey is executed, and a lot of people are saying, and some other people are executed, um, because they were maybe thinking about a slave rebellion, but there was no actual slave rebellion in 1822. All right, Denmark vessel, and that's the thing that you always say. It's more like the Denmark like conspiracy, like that, In that, yes, he was a free slave in South Carolina, kind of talking to people about, hey, we need to get together, get our freedom. But there is really not too many. There's a lot of historians today think that like a lot of African Americans were used as scapegoats, like in the New York City riot of 1741, that was just unfairly like claimed to have some type of rebellion, and it's really kind of a sad story. But that's just one example. We got other examples about uneasy feelings, but that's all the slavery kind of sectionalism issue that's going on here. Go ahead. Go ahead. I thought you had a question. I'm sorry. And that was more Prosser's rebellion, the Vesey rebellion. There's always that going on in every one, and it did shut down. But they're just like Nat Turner, like like you don't know Nat Turner. I'm 50 miles from Nat Turner. I'm being like executed because Yes, that's like Nat Turner's rebellion. Is, oh, I'm Mexican. Why? Because you're part of the Nat Turner rebellion. No, I'm not. You know, and how are you going to prove your innocence? Hey, you're part of that rebellion here, and again, like you've been talking to that Bessie fellow. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You get it? So there's a lot of shadiness, like again, everything, and that kind of like conspiracy, like down there. So, other uneasy feeling things that's going on here. Well, the South did not like the American system. I think I mentioned that before. Border and territorial disputes with Great Britain. This is why we get several treaties that I'll maybe, if I have time to talk about, like the Rush-Bagot Treaty, the Adams-Onis Treaty with Spain, and the Convention of 1818. I'm just kind of talking about why it's uneasy feelings. And finally, Cammy's Panic of 1819. All right, the Panic of 18. Now, capitalism works this way in cycles. Usually, you cannot sustain prosperity. What the basic level of prosperity is that it will go on and on and on and on. And you know what people do? They overly speculate, overly invest. And that's why there's always a bubble that bursts. And that's what happens in 1819. Now, this happens about every 20 years in capitalism. You don't have to take down these years: 1837, 1857, 1873, 1893, 1907, and then the big one. I say again, so 1929. Let's get down a memory device why most all of them happened in the 19th century. It's called .com, .com. And I'll tell you why. He said, well, what's the cause of the panic of 1819? We'll see. The collapse of foreign markets. Collapse of foreign markets. Collapse. Over speculation in land and investments. This happens to be specifically land because the land is the richest here that's going out here to the west. So it's over speculation. All right. And what is the M? Mismanagement by banks and businesses. Like the really one in 1873 is the J. Cook Corporation. It really goes down under. So you see this. Don't worry, these are the general reasons. You can get in specific, but you'll always have like, hey, there's over speculation in land. There's bad business investments. The overseas markets collapse. I'm telling you, it's going to work all the time. All right, it's going to work. There are some specifics for this. All right. So here's the mismanagement of our banks, the over speculation in land. Well, money starts drying up. Well, what happens to these small banks? They can't get money from like, the national bank or bigger banks because the bigger banks say, hey, we don't want your banknotes. We want gold and silver. Well, I'm going to have to call in those loans that I lent to S. Beatty, like Alina, like again, like that. I need that money back now, or like again, you need to pay up. I can't be like, forgiving, so I need that money now. Well, I don't have it. Well, we're going to take your horse. We're going to take your farm. We're going to take your house. You get it? That's what was happening in the Panic of 1819. All right, in here. So that's usually the general case here, and it's really a big, big collapse. And it's kind of surprising that like Monroe, is elected the next year, and that usually does not happen after a big collapse. It was not as bad as going to be as 1830. 1837 is very, very severe, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. Now, so go ahead. Sure. Right. It starts trickling down. Yeah, no, they ask their people that you've taken loans out from. Like that. They want their money like they say. They can't be as forgiving, like, well, we have a bad crop, like, this summer. And they were before that. No, I need to call in that loan. I need to, like I said, you need to come in and make a payment. We needed a couple of silver dollars. Matter of fact, here's what would happen. I'm telling you, as Beatty would come in, it says, like, I don't have it. It's like, I like that horse out there. I think we could probably get some money for that. Well, I'll take your horse. So it's not as like, back in the day, just dollars and briefcases, or like, you owe some money, you're writing a check. It's not like that, but it is coming down on some money. And what the bigger bank is saying, the national bank is saying, is if you want loans from us or money, time to call in the loan you got from us. But also, here to make the problems even worse, we want gold and silver. We don't want the bank note from North Carolina. The Raleigh Bank from North Carolina is like saying, hey, this is like $50, like, note. This is a $10 note. Here's a to you. That's not going to do any good. All right. So a lot of things, and then they're not loaning out. Banks help capitalism by loaning money, by spreading out the money. I think that's just like, the basic economics in there. That's how they create like more money in a way. But when you have when you have a contraction, it gets bad. Don't worry, we're going to be revisiting this about every 20 years, as you just, I try to mention there, but it's going to follow the same general path. So it's really not the era of good feelings. Now, let's change this. Why is it the era of good feelings? Go ahead. Go ahead. There you go. You see that all the times in your history text. It's a one-party government, so you really don't have too much political dissension. All right, till the election of 1824, like that. So, but you don't really have too much political dissension at this time. Very good. Anything else here? If you want to see like some results of like what's going on in society, we talked about. How about this? All the kind of like nationalism, cultural, economic, and political nationalism, and under that political nationalism was a one-party government. So you could say that. Um, you don't. You have all that's going on. You have land expansion. Like again, Land Act of 1820. You don't have to know that really for tomorrow, but I'm just telling you some stuff. Um, and you know what? The renewed independent rigor, RIGOR. You know what we're going to say in December 1823? What is the statement that John Quincy Adams and James Monroe is going to say to European nations? What is the statement? It's not a law. It's just kind of a statement that's going to have precedence all the way up until 2019. What is the they declare? Go ahead. What do they call it? Once again, everything. What do they call it? What is this? Monroe Doctrine. That's right. That's what it is. I know it's what it's a. So Great Britain comes to John Quincy and said, look, a lot of Spanish countries in Latin America are gaining their independence. All right. Why do you think they're gaining their independence? What's motivating them? America, the American Revolution, all that. And they say, hey, we want our independence like that. So Simon Bolivar, like the George Washington of Latin America, they want that. So Great Britain comes to John Quincy and said, we need to make a mutual statement to keep all the European countries out of here. And John Quincy Adams thought about it. Maybe we don't need to be together. Maybe we can make our own because we're in the Western Hemisphere. This is our location. So I think I can come up with a better idea like that, make a better statement. What is in this details of this market that you're going to have to know? That's a deal breaker, kind of like, foreign policy statements, Monroe Doctrine. You have to know this. Yes. And what will we pledge? Right. We're not going to interfere with European affairs. We want some isolationism. We want some like neutrality too, like that. So we'll stay out there. And Great Britain they're not going to create any new colonies. That could be tricky for you tomorrow. They can have their colony. They're not kicking Great Britain, France, Spain, and Holland out of the Western Hemisphere. They're saying, if you do, now here's kind of key, we might have to actually escalate it into war. So that's a very bold statement right there. And also Quincy Adams kind of knew we really didn't have, who's down in Latin America and kind of keeping all the other Europeans out right now? Great Britain. You get it? So we don't have to, we'll make a statement and Great Britain is going to keep all the other countries out right now for the moment. So again, it's a bonus, it's a win-win, as they say. Go ahead, Cam. You know what? We have to be clear when people write it. I hate it when I see kids, the Monroe Doctrine law, the Monroe Doctrine bill. There's no such thing. It's a foreign policy thing. I'm telling you, you will sound intelligent when you know that. I know you guys saying like, oh, I know that. And I'm so proud of you because it's not. But it's a foreign policy statement as referred to Like again, I heard Obama mention Monroe Doctrine. Like again, I've mentioned all like the current presidents talk about because of our Monroe Doctrine. That tells you how timeless it is. I'm not worried about the dates. I know it's like December 1823, 1824. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to like really hold you accountable for that date. They want you to know that, oh, President Monroe, Monroe Doctrine. Now, I want you guys to know the Secretary of State, like, John Quincy Adams is like the primary author. He's lining up to be like, the next president like that in there. So he makes this, and it's a big statement because we're going to study the Roosevelt Corollary and they just adding on to the Monroe Doctrine, and it says this is the reason why we will defend these European, these Latin American countries. It's why we get into the Spanish American War. So important. Go ahead, Martine. So the Monroe Doctrine, the doctrine. Yeah. So it didn't kick nations out; it just sanctioned them to stop. Yes, yes, that's very. That's where it gets like French Guiana, British Guiana, Belize. Like, okay, it's fine. We're not going to go in and we're not going to intervene. Again, Teddy Roosevelt, like, well, we're going to intervene. Like when things are going bad, like again, like that, well, we're going to go in there. Matter of fact, I'm going to create my own country, Panama. It's like, we don't want to be independent. Oh, yes, you do want to be independent, like that. But I mean, we'll get to that part here, like in there. Now, just real quick, just give me like last 5 minutes here, like that, for this, and I'll run through. Matter of fact, we'll probably do that tomorrow because the treaties is better to look on a map to know what I'm talking about. But let's talk about three guys here. And I talked about Henry Clay. So you might know where he's from the West. What state is he representing in Congress for the most part? Kentucky. All right. So that's Henry Clay. We're going to get the West, South, and the North kind of represented here. That's what's creating this new kind of sectionalism here. John C. Calhoun from South Carolina, like that. And he actually agrees at first with the tariff. He actually agrees at first, and he's like, I don't think this is good for the South as you would get into the tariff debate, tariff abomination debate. And then finally, a new guy, somewhat on the scene, and he's actually against the tariff too, and he's from the Northeast. He's from Massachusetts, really from New Hampshire too. So you can say just it doesn't matter if you say New England or something like that and everything. Daniel Webster. All right. So and it's very important to know these three guys because up until about the compromise of 1850, they will always be prominent in debates, sectionalism, and what's best, all right, for the country as we get ready for the Civil War at this time. As maybe you guys were getting ready for the Civil War during the Constitutional Convention in 1787, as you know, it kind of is like it's going to creep along, but as we're getting ready for war. So it's really very important that you do know those three guys and how they look at each other, like, and they represent different sections of the country and different interests. Again, for review, why does the South do not like the American system? Now, the American system now is the bit. Why do they not like the bit, even though the I part was not improved? Tell me the three arguments against all three of those parts if you're from the South. Tell me what are those arguments? Why are they against the bank? That's probably the easiest one. As you know, just think about Jackson. Why are they against the bank? Why is most of the people in the South, the representatives, against the national bank, even after the war? Too much power to central government, unconstitutional. All right, it's for the elite. It's for the people in the East. We're 1820. You're thinking here right now about the population, like 5 to 7 million people, and you still have about 92% in rural areas. So that we're still not, it's going to take another like about 60 years here to really start really changing, all right, dynamics of life. Why against internal improvements? Well, everybody should be like for building up bridges and railroads. What do you know about the next 20 or 25 years? Where is the go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Like saying that. So all the major, like the Cumberland Road, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Well, where is the Charleston Turnpike? Where's the Biloxi, Turnpike? Where's that national? Where are the railroads and things of that nature? This is all self-serving, one section of the country, and maybe to the west. And again, Henry Clay is like, hey, Henry Clay is a Westerner. Said, well, why would he support that? Well, because he's kind of more in the South. Well, he's thinking it's going to connect them with trade and kind of boost up their manufacturing. The South is like, no. And finally, since you guys aren't from like, why the tariff? Why are they against the tariff here? What are the arguments against raising the tariff here to that price here? Go ahead. It benefits northern manufacturing. How does it hurt southern exports? How does it hurt southern? What is it? Go ahead. Wasn't it like the South exported a lot of like things internationally? Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So like taxes on that would like hurt their economy in a way. Well, what would Britain and France or like people in Spain would do if we put tariffs on their kind of like yeah, yeah, they will retaliate. They will do that, and you see that happening today. Like again, so well, hey, we're going to put tariffs on like the southern exports that's coming in there to their imports. And another thing, last thing, like saying that's just last thing. Southerners do not have a wide range of goods, so when prices do go up, that's coming in from those imports, it's like, wow, I can't afford this at the general store here. They don't have a lot of choices at all after they traveled about 20 miles to town. Then you only see two shirts there. Like say again, say, oh man, you could get this shirt for like 2 cents. So it's a nickel now because I got to pay the tax on that. Like say, and then you say to yourself, but Mr. Price, what about the shirts coming up from the north? Well, to compete a little bit, or because they have prices up there, they'll raise their price maybe not to nickel, but maybe to 4 cents from 2 cents. That's on that new nice ruffled piratey shirt and everything and stuff that they want. You get it, and that's what will happen on their consumer goods. Good enough. I'm done because again it's 30 minutes.